The rain had been falling since sunset, the kind of rain that made the world feel smaller and lonelier, and Mark Holloway felt every drop of it in his bones as he sat, alone in his modest farmhouse, at the edge of town, staring at a cold cup of coffee, and a photograph turned face down on the table, his late wife's, smile still too painful to look at. Directly when a sudden knock echoed through the house, sharp and urgent, cutting through the quiet like a warning. Mark froze, his instincts, sharpening not from fear but from years of responsibility as a single father who had learned the hard way that danger often arrived, disguised as desperation, and when he opened the door, he found a young woman standing there, soaked to the skin, trembling, her eyes reflecting both terror and resolve, her clothes torn not by weather but by flight. And before he could ask a single question, she whispered, "Please, I just need one night," and something in her voice, something broken yet unyielding, made him step aside despite every rational reason screaming at him to shut the door, because Mark Holloway was a man who had lost everything once and refused to let the world take anything else from him. Inside, he gave her dry clothes, a blanket, and silence, noticing how carefully she studied the room, the exits, the windows, how she flinched at distant thunder that didn't sound like thunder at all. And as the hours crept forward, Mark sensed that this was no ordinary runaway, because outside his home, headlights swept across the fields far too slowly, far too deliberately, and when the woman finally spoke again, her voice low and steady, she said words that changed everything. "They'll kill you if they find me here, but they'll burn this world if they don't." And Mark, staring into eyes that carried the weight of something far older than fear, realized that whatever she was running from, it wasn't human, and whatever she was protecting, it was bigger than his own grief. And in that moment, without knowing her name, her origin, or her truth, Mark made the quiet, irreversible decision to stand between the darkness and a frightened stranger. Because that's what fathers do, and that's what humans have always done best when the universe underestimated them. By dawn, the truth revealed itself not in words, but in fire and light, as the sky split open above the fields and shapes descended, that bent reality around them, machines alive with alien intelligence scanning the land for a signal that pulsed faintly from the woman now, standing beside Mark, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, her form subtly shifting as she admitted the truth that she was the last living bearer of a species whose extinction had been ordered by a galactic empire terrified of what humans might become if they ever learned. The truth she carried, and as alien forces surrounded the farmhouse. Weapons charging, Mark did not run, did not beg, did not kneel, but instead stepped forward with nothing but a hunting rifle and a voice forged by years of loss and love, telling them in calm, unshakable words that they would go through him first. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened, because the universe watched a lonely single father stand against annihilation, not for glory, not for reward, but because one night someone had asked for help and he had said yes. The invaders hesitated, calculations failing to account for human stubbornness, human loyalty, human rage when pushed too far. And when the woman activated the truth, she carried a signal that awakened dormant defenses buried beneath Earth's surface by an ancient alliance that believed humanity might one day be worth saving. It was Mark's stand that gave her the seconds she needed. And as alien fleets retreated, shocked and broken, she turned to him with tears in her eyes and called him by a title no one had ever given him before, guardian of a world. And though she offered him stars, technology, and power beyond imagination, Mark only smiled and asked if the universe could give him one thing: peace for his child and a future where no one knocked on the door in fear again. And as she disappeared into the sky, leaving Earth safe and humanity unknowingly protected, Mark returned to his quiet home. The rain finally stopped, the morning sun rising over the fields, knowing that sometimes the greatest heroes are not soldiers or kings, but tired parents who choose kindness when the universe tests them. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the hidden strength inside ordinary people, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this prove that humanity's greatest power has never been weapons or stars, but heart, courage, and the refusal to turn someone away when they knock on our door in the dark. The world did not celebrate the morning after salvation, because the world never knew it had stood on the edge of extinction, and that was exactly how Mark Holloway wanted it. Yet peace, he learned quickly, is never silence. It is merely the space between storms, and as days passed, the farmhouse returned to its familiar rhythms of creaking floors, early mornings, and the quiet weight of memory. But something unseen had changed, something subtle and permanent, like the pressure of a distant star tugging at the tides of his life. And Mark felt it every time he stepped outside and sensed the air listening. Every time his child slept too peacefully, as if guarded by forces no lullaby could summon. At night, Mark dreamed, not of his wife's final smile, or the endless grief he had learned to carry, but of doors opening across the galaxy, of choices made in moments that lasted less than a heartbeat yet echoed forever. And sometimes he would wake to find faint symbols burned briefly into the frost on his windows, or hear a sound like wind singing through metal that vanished when he focused on it, signs he pretended not to notice because pretending had become a survival skill. Long ago, until one evening, weeks later, the knock came again, softer this time, deliberate, respectful, and Mark's heart tightened, not with fear but with recognition, because he knew, somewhere, deep in the marrow of his bones, that the universe had returned to test him once more. When he opened the door, the woman stood there again, no longer wounded or hunted, her presence calm yet immense, wearing a human form that struggled to contain the gravity of what she truly was. And she smiled sadly, thanking him not as a savior but as an equal, explaining that his choice had shifted probabilities far beyond Earth, that entire civilizations now studied humanity, not as a resource or a threat, but as a variable too unpredictable to ignore, because no empire could calculate a species capable of self-sacrifice without reward. She told him the truth he had sensed, that Earth was now watched, protected not by fleets but by reputation, whispered across star systems as the world, defended by the stubbornness of a single human father. And Mark listened, silent, absorbing the unbearable weight of being unknowingly responsible for the survival of billions, yet still asking the only question that mattered to him: will my child be safe? And when she answered yes, not as a promise but as a certainty woven into the laws of probability themselves, Mark felt something loosen in his chest for the first time since his wife's death. A knot he had not realized he still carried. But the universe, she warned, had rules even kindness could not break, and the protection he had earned came with a cost, not a debt, but a calling, because there would be others, refugees slipping through the cracks of collapsing empires, beings who would seek out the place where compassion had rewritten fate. And Mark's home, humble and forgotten, had become a beacon, not of power but of trust. He refused at first, insisting he was no hero, just a tired man trying to raise a child without breaking. Yet she only nodded, explaining gently that heroes never accept the title, because they don't act for recognition. They act because something inside them makes refusal impossible. And before leaving again, she gave him nothing tangible, no weapons, no devices, but knowledge, subtle and instinctive, teaching him how to feel when danger crossed unseen boundaries, how to recognize truth in a voice even when spoken through alien throats, how to stand still when the universe tried to intimidate him with size and scale. And after she vanished into the night, Mark understood that his loneliness had ended not because someone stayed, but because he now belonged to something vast and watching, something that respected him. The first test came sooner than expected, when a frightened child, not human, but close enough to make his heart ache, appeared at the edge of his field, pursued by hunters who wore mercy like a costume. And Mark did what he always did, opening his door, standing firm, speaking calmly, and in doing so he discovered the truth the universe was slowly learning. That humanity's greatest weapon was not violence or intelligence, but persistence, the refusal to surrender, empathy even when the cost was terrifying. And as the hunters withdrew, unsettled and shaken, Mark returned inside, holding his child close, understanding at last that while he could never replace what he had lost, he could transform it into something enduring, something that would ripple outward across stars and centuries. proving that the smallest acts of courage, repeated without witnesses, could shape destiny itself. And if this chapter reminds you that even ordinary people can carry extraordinary responsibility, that quiet strength can protect worlds, then stay with this story, subscribe to the channel, because this is not just a tale of aliens and stars, it is a reminder that the universe is watching humanity, and it is still deciding who we are.